Welcome back. Joining us now is Trebor Worthen, managing partner of Majority Designs, a consulting and political direct mail company. Trebor, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Good to be here.
Let's start off with the governor's race. Was Joe Dorman a better than expected opponent here?
I think he was a better candidate in a lot of ways than most people thought. I mean, his fundraising was certainly stronger than I would have thought. And I give him credit for running a much better campaign than I would say the vast majority of onlookers would have given him credit for. But, you know, Mary Fallin, strong, convincing win. I think she got about 4 points fewer than she got 4 years ago, which, I mean, come on, if you're a governor for 4 years, surely there's going to be 4% of people that are going to be upset over some decision or something you did or didn't do. So, you know, I don't really tend to hold that against her or think that reflects poorly on her in any way. And, you know, I think Joe probably did a little bit better than people thought, but man, Mary was strong, and you know she's the leader of the party here in Oklahoma, and I'm interested to see what she's going to take on in the upcoming session.
Let's talk about what was the closest race. We just talked with Chris Wilson, of course, about polls, and it was neck and neck for the state superintendent of public instruction. Of course, no incumbent, so the seat was technically open here. And coming in, then it broke, and Hoffmeister had a convincing win. What was it playing that race, and what happened Tuesday?
Yeah, you know, I think it was one of those races where Democrats have a natural advantage, you know, when it comes to anything related to the issue of education. A lot of the public polling that you've seen in the state of Oklahoma shows a much stronger preference for Democrats with anything related to education. They trust Democrats more when it comes to education. A lot of unpopularity when it comes to Governor Fallin and Superintendent Barisi's positions on education in a lot of ways.
Those are all the ads, right?
Exactly. And I think that when you look at that, you kind of start out and you go, okay, well, this is one Republicans are really going to have to fight for. It's not a natural constituency for Republicans to hold. But Joy Hoffmeister is just a very fantastic candidate. She's a unique kind of Republican, somebody who can really appeal to people in the education establishment, somebody who can appeal to people who care about education reform in Oklahoma. Parents like her, teachers like her, superintendents like her. So she really is somebody who can put together a coalition to win. And at the end of the day, you know, when all the votes were counted, she had about 4,000 fewer votes than Mary Fallin. So, you know, it didn't finish too much, you know, behind the, you know, quote unquote top of the ticket. And I think it was a great night for her and a great win for Republican Party to not lose a statewide elected seat.
Let's go further down the ballot, and with the state Senate now with 40 Republicans to 8 Democrats and 48. Any surprises there besides just maybe the overall finish?
Well, you know, the surprise certainly is the number. You know, I mean, 40 to 8 is just, you know, that is unbelievable. I spoke with my dad, who served 18 years in the Oklahoma House of Representatives, and he couldn't believe it. You know, when he got elected in 1986, I think there were 12 Republican senators, you know, and now there are 8 Democratic senators. So anybody who's been around and observing politics for a long time, that number is just a shocker overall. I think to me, one of the surprises was, you know, you saw groups like the State Chamber of Commerce and one of their allied groups, Stand for Children, get involved heavily in attacking a couple of GOP incumbents, and they came up short in those races. And I think a lot of people who were watching those expected the races to go differently, but the Republican incumbents held on. That fueled the gains, in addition to winning in some areas, Democrat areas, open seats that were vacated. And at the end of the night, 4 new Republican seats that they didn't have before.
I think one of those races that had a lot of attention was down near Durant, Oklahoma,
yes.
with
Yes, sir.
Senator Josh Burkeen was the incumbent there. You mentioned your father serving in the House of Representatives. Let me ask you about that. Any surprises with the state House? I think the numbers are roughly the same when it all shook out.
To me, it was a surprise that a Republican won Joe Dorman's seat. So
good point.
Here you have Joe Dorman. He's leading the ticket for Democrats in the state of Oklahoma, and his own legislative seat flips. That was baffling to me. I never would have expected that, especially with him on the ballot, on the top of the ticket. I would have thought that, you know, that seat would have stayed in the Democratic Party. So that one was a surprise for me, certainly. But at the end of the day, that pickup was offset by the loss of incumbent Aaron Stiles down in Norman. And so no gain for the House Republicans, which is interesting because you have the state Senate picking up 4 seats, which is like a 10% net increase for their caucus versus the House, no gains. So I think that, you know, people that watch politics will have to kind of go and look at that and say, well, you know, what accounts for this difference? The Republicans in the Senate picking up seats, Republicans in the House, you know, best they could do was break even. I think Scott Inman, the minority leader of the Democrat House members, felt a lot better Wednesday morning than the Democrat leader of the state Senate.
Good point. Okay, so the Oklahoman on Sunday, going into the elections last week, had an article that said that Democrats were starting to present strong competition for Republicans. I think they even focused on 5th Congressional District, but what was happening in the governor's race. Did that happen Tuesday? And maybe if it didn't, should we expect that to happen moving forward?
I think you certainly expect that to happen moving forward. I mean, you know, when you look at the state, there are areas of the state demographically that are changing and favoring the Democrats as they change. Oklahoma City area, the 5th Congressional District certainly is one of those areas. We didn't see that in 2014. I don't think you're going to see it necessarily anytime soon.
Right.
And I think another thing is a lot of the people, a lot of the demographic groups that are making it more competitive didn't show up on Tuesday. Some of those voter groups stayed home. They weren't energized. They weren't excited about anything. They stayed home, didn't vote, and that gave Republicans an even greater edge. And that's something you saw across the country, really. A lot of the Democrat constituencies voted in smaller numbers than they had before.
Trebor, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate everything. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Still ahead, what do these changes in power mean over the next 2 years? We'll discuss what you can expect from new leadership all across the board. We'll be right back.